All right, so we're looking tonight at the book of Numbers, chapter 13, as we continue on Wednesday nights to take a look at little-known heroes of faith. Perhaps they acted in tonight's case in coordination with another character, like a Joshua, and it's not about them getting the proper attention. It's more about us learning from these heroes of faith that don't get a lot of attention, but they did great things, and they were very instrumental in God's plan. The map I have up shows, when everything is said and done, the division of the promised land, the division of the land of Canaan. And you can tell which of the names of the tribes, who was given what land, how much area they had, and where the area was. But long before this happened, they were right at the door. They were right at the door of the promised land. They were about a year and a half out from Egypt, and they had come up to the land of Canaan in Numbers 13. Now, God had already promised Moses in Exodus that he would give them the land, right? That was the whole promise. I'll deliver you from Pharaoh. I'll give you the land. It's yours. Go and take it. Only obey me, keep my statutes, keep my commandments, and I'll give you a land that flows with milk and honey. This is 38 years prior to them taking the land, and they're right on the doorstep. So keep that in mind as we look at this story tonight. They're there. So our hero of faith tonight is Caleb. In chapter 13, kind of to bring us up to speed, what had just happened in chapter 12 was, as usual, the people were grumbling and complaining, but even Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because he had married an Ethiopian woman. Well, God didn't take too kindly to that. Miriam was struck with leprosy, and Aaron was scared out of his mind. So, once again, God said, when you speak against my leadership, you're speaking against me. And he even told Moses several times, it's not you, don't take it personal, it's me that they're rebellious against. It's me that they're unhappy with. It's me that they're rebelling against. So then that brings us to chapter 13 of Numbers. Now, remember, God already told Moses, go take the land. Why is that important? I think we'll see in just a minute. If you go down the first part of Numbers 13, the Lord told Moses to send people out to spy the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers shall ye send a man, every one a ruler among them. So you can go through on your own and read it. He picks a leader of the tribe of Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Ephraim, Benjamin, Zebulun, Gadiel, Joseph, Dan, Asher, Gad. So the nation of Israel is equally represented in this reconnaissance mission. He tells them to go, and go down with me, verse 16. These are the names of the men which Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Oshea, the son of Nun, Jehoshua. In other words, Joshua. And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said, get ye up this way southward, and go into the mountain, and see the land that is, and the people that dwell therein, wherein they be strong or weak, few or many, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, what cities they be and dwell in, whether tents or strongholds, and what the land is, if it be fat or lean, whether there's wood therein or not, and be of good courage, and bring some of the fruit of the land, because now the time was the time of the first fruit. grapes. Now, see if anybody did you catch a problem already? Bobby?
He didn't tell Moses to send out spies to see if you could take the land. He said, go take it, I give it to you.
Amen. This was a mistake, in my opinion, that Moses made, and was another reason that cost him entrance into the promised land. Like a good military strategist or general, he thought it was a good idea to send. He wasn't commanded of God to do this. And he was told to go take the land. He should have trusted and believed God that it was good and fat and flowing with milk and honey and full of wood and everything they would need, just simply by obeying God. That's all he had to do. But he took it upon himself to do more than that. And that got him into trouble. So they go and spy the land out. 40 days they're gone. They go, the 12 spies go for 40 days. I'm going to summarize. 40 days, and they go to different parts and they just observe. They mingle or mix in with the crowd when they can, or they just observe at night and at day. I mean, they get a good idea of Canaan. I mean, the land they were promised, the land that God said, go take. Well, they went and looked. They followed Moses' leadership, and he told them to go, and they went. Verse 22 says they went south. They encountered things to their eyes and their heart that would cause fear. Probably one of the reasons God never told them to go on this reconnaissance mission is because they were going to trust what they saw with their eyes instead of living by faith. And just go take the land. God says, I promise it to you, I'll give it to you. Doesn't matter how many soldiers are there. Moses gave them instructions. See if they live in tents, if they have a big fortress, if they're strong people, if they're weak. Go spy it out. So a month and 10 days they spent to see what it was like. And they also obeyed him. Verse 23, and they came into the brook of Eshcol and cut down thence a branch with one cluster of grapes. And they had to bear it between them on a staff. Between two on a staff, and they brought some pomegranates and figs. So the grapes were so large, the cluster was so large, it took 2 men to carry them on a staff. Maybe you've seen the picture of these huge grapes. And some pomegranates and some figs. And the place was called the Brook of Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes which the children of Israel cut down. And they returned from searching the land after 40 days. Verse 26. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel. Now remember, these 12 have been together now for 40 days. And they showed them, verse 26, the fruit of the land. And they told them and said, we came into a land where thou sentest, and it surely floweth with milk and honey. And this is the fruit thereof, the grapes, the pomegranates, and the figs. Nevertheless, now, when someone uses the word nevertheless, especially in this case, that means forget everything I just said. We got a problem. They could have said, maybe today, instead of using that long of a word, we'd say, but. We present some facts and say, but, you can't get there from here. Nevertheless, verse 28, the people be strong that dwell in the land. The cities are walled and very great, and moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. The children of Anak were the descendants of the giants Genesis 6 talks about. And they were extremely tall and big and large. They were the descendants of the Anaks. The Amalekites dwelled in the south. All their enemies are here. The Hittites, the Jebusites, I'm in verse 29, the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and the coast of Jordan. So, how do you think the people felt about hearing that report? Well, scared them to death. Yeah, it's everything God promised, it flows with milk and honey, but how are we going to overcome all these tribes in well-built fortresses with a lot of people, and in addition to that, they have the descendants from the giants there. Verse 30, our hero of faith. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said this, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are able to overcome it. Got a feeling I would have liked Jacob. I mean Caleb. He quieted the people down who were starting to get raucous and said, let's go do it. Let's go get it. For we're able to. However, there was a disagreement with the 10 of the other 12. But the men that went up with him said, we're not able to go against these people, for they're stronger than we are. And they brought an evil report of the land which they had searched for the children of Israel. The land which we've gone to search is the land, and the inhabitants thereof are the people that we saw, I'm in verse 32, are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, verse 33, and the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so were we in their sight. So you see the results of not following what God said to do. Interesting facts. Did you know that some scholars don't even believe that Caleb was a true Israelite? That he left Egypt as part of a mixed multitude. It says he represented the tribe of Judah, but he's not featured in Christ's lineage. Exodus 12:38 offers the brief statement that a mixed multitude left Egypt together with the children of Israel. It's known from archaeological discoveries and the Word of God that non-Egyptians were present at the same time the descendants of Jacob during the New Kingdom. The presence of non-native Israelites among those who came out of Egypt gives more sense to the commands God made in Exodus 12 to treat the stranger and the sojourner and the Israelite the same. Now back to Caleb. He's described Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite. Kenizite's a tribe that opposed Israel. Numbers 32:12, Joshua 14:6. The only mention of them in the Old Testament is Genesis 15, when they are listed among the inhabitants of Canaan that Abraham's descendants would displace. So when and why Caleb and his ancestors were in Egypt and came to be part of the tribe of Judah is a matter for some conjecture. Now, after studying that, I've come to the conclusion that that's not true, that Caleb truly, from his name, which means he's a real go-getter, he's real strong, and the blessing he receives afterwards. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that, you know, many times the Old Testament hints at Gentile inclusion in the New, and this might have been one of those times. We just don't know. We do know, however, that he was a man of integrity. We know that he was fearless. He just had a lot of good qualities that Caleb had as our hero of faith tonight. Let me read something I pulled up. Because we hear about Joshua, but Caleb, not so much. Technology at its finest. Give me just a second. All right. Here's Caleb in a nutshell. Faithful man of God, beginning in the book of Numbers, after being delivered from bondage, led by God to the border of the land of Canaan, a land that flowed with milk and honey. Promised that he would inherit it back in Exodus 3. Moses chose 12 men from each tribe. They went out, they looked, they came back. Joshua and Caleb gave a different report than the other 10. The other 10 said, we'll never do it, we can't make it. Caleb right away says, let's go, let's do it, we're able. So he had this disagreement with them the whole time. He silenced the murmuring of fearful men, saying that we should go take it, and take it now. He took his stand because he followed the Lord wholeheartedly. We read that in Joshua 14, 8 through 9. Caleb is 40 years old, or thereabouts in the story tonight. When he finally gets to enter Canaan, he's 80 to 85. They are turned back, they are turned away, they're right there. It's been a year and a half, maybe 2 years, they're right there. All they had to do was obey God. And Caleb knows that, and Joshua knows that, but they're outvoted. And the 10 give a bad report, and they're scared to death. And the people begin to get upset and murmur, and they're going to stone them. They're going to stone these two. And then they drag Moses into it. They said, why don't we get us another leader? I've got to hurry, so I'm going to paraphrase this, but you read chapter 13 and 14 for yourself. Let's get another leader to take us back to Egypt. So Caleb does his best to silence them. Unfortunately, the people ignored him and Joshua and listened to the other 10. And they wept all night long, you'll read. They cried all night for sorrow. And their conclusion in the morning was, let's stone them and let's get another leader to take us back to Egypt. God was exceedingly angry with the people, and he threatened to destroy them. He said, in effect, I'm going to destroy these people, and I will make of thee a great nation, Moses. I'm going to start over again, and the promise I made to Abraham, I'll fulfill it in you, and the people I'll make of you, you can read it for yourself, will be greater and stronger than these people. Now here's the heart of Moses. Moses said, Lord, if you do that, what are the people in Egypt going to think? What are all the other nations going to think? We have a God that failed? I mean, he fell on his face. Him and Aaron both fell on their face before the Lord and said, Lord, please don't destroy these people. And he reminded God of his promises. Because God was angry. Look at verse 4 of chapter 14. And they said one to another, let us make a captain and return to Egypt. And Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before the assembly of the congregation. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh rent their clothes and begged the people not to rebel. But the congregation, verse 10 of chapter 14, bade stone them with stones. Well, God had had enough. God intervened. Look what it says. Then the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people provoke me, and how long will it be that they'll not believe me for all the signs that I have shown them? I will smite them with pestilence, I will disinherit them, and I will make of thee a greater nation and mightier than they. That's verse 12 of chapter 14. Then Moses pleads for them and intercedes for them. He says, Lord, in verse 18, you are long-suffering, you are of great mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression, and by no means clearing the guilty. Please pardon, I beseech thee, the iniquity of these people according to the greatness of your mercy. Notice verse 20 of chapter 14. And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word. He answered Moses' prayer. Now, this was not a bluff on God's part. God doesn't play word games. He doesn't put out false threats. He was ready, willing, and able to start all over again. He'd already done it once. with the pre-Genesis population. He'd start all over again. He told Moses, the people I'll raise up from your loins will be greater than this rabble. So even though he did not destroy them, what he says is, everyone from 20 years up will never see this promised land. Turn around and take them back into the wilderness. They've not got enough training to live as a free people. They're slave-minded. It just irked me afresh and anew this week when I read that they were right there. And God, only because God all of a sudden showed himself in his glory, did they stop from stoning and killing. The only two men who were telling them the truth, Joshua and Caleb. Notice what God says. Verse 23, surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. But my servant Caleb, verse 24, because he had another spirit with him, and hath followed me fully, him will I bring into the land whereinto he went, and his seed shall possess it. Now the Amalekites, the Canaanites dwelt in the valley. Tomorrow turn ye and get ye into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. Caleb, my servant, God says, has another spirit in him, has followed me fully, and I will bring him into the land whereunto he went, and his seed shall possess it. We find in subsequent chapters God indeed kept his word. Caleb did enter the land. He seemed to have been just as strong and wise and mighty as he was when he was 40. And he got a good possession of the land. And his relatives got good possessions of the land. Why? Because he simply said, obey God. Now isn't it something? All 12 of those men saw the same thing. And yet only 2 of the 12 had the faith required to say, we can do it. And Caleb was a go-getter. His very name means that. There's some other translations of his name that put it in a more derogatory term like rabid dog, but that's not the idea to get of it. Caleb was just, the best thing we can say about him is what God, fully committed. He was fully committed no matter what. He said, let's go, let's take it, we can do it. And the other 10 said, no, hold it. I don't know what you were looking at. So, that's the beginning of 38 more years of wandering in the wilderness until that entire generation dies out. They're the same ones that got tired of and started whining about manna every day to eat, miraculous manna. They said, we want meat. God said, I'll give you meat. Remember? 3 feet high in every direction around the camp as far as you could see. And they got so sick of it as it was coming out of their nostrils, many of them died. Many people have said to me, you know, the God of the Old Testament seems so different than the God of the New. And it's important for us as New Testament believers, I think, to understand he's not. This is the same God. What's the difference? Jesus. Jesus is the difference. He is the one that presents the image of the love of God, the forgiveness of God, the grace of God. And there are types of him. Caleb being one of them, Moses being one of them, Abraham being one of them. Moses was described as the meekest man on the planet. But Caleb, an unsung hero, God said he has a different spirit in him. And I'm going to let him enter the land. And him and Joshua did. No one else, including Aaron and including Moses. All because of disobedience. That's the only reason. If they had obeyed God, everything would have been okay. But they didn't. They cried all night over the bad news. and then came up with a great plan. Now, let me finish this story real quick. If you've not read ahead, you're not going to believe this. So now they decide we can do it on our own. In the rest of chapter 14, so they get a group together to go attack a partial group. They didn't even take everyone with them to go attack. Well, they get soundly defeated. Why? They weren't going on belief and faithfulness. They just felt bad, and I guess their conscience smote them, and they said, well, how are we going to make up for this? God's angry with us. So if you read chapter 14, you'll see that they get, it's a futile invasion attempt. They tried it on their own, and it didn't work. That's the long story short. You can read chapter 14. They get defeated. They get turned back. It just amazes me that they even tried that on their own strength and on their own power. You know? If they'd have just done it God's way, they'd have got God's results. But when they tried to do it their way, and they didn't listen to God's messenger, and they didn't listen to Caleb and Joshua, they were defeated.